Welcome to this video. Thank you for tuning in and sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos, welcome back. If you have, my intention is unity and oneness, the highest levels of love light. I'm just going into a little energy update here, and maybe I'll do a little car flow later. I want to do both, but I feel like there's a lot going on right now, and so I just wanted to kind of share some things from my perspective that maybe someone will find helpful, that what they're going through right now, either with themselves or with clients, family, life. One of the things I've been noticing is I want to talk a little bit about ascension symptoms, which I'm calling it that, but I usually like to call it physical upgrades. I want to talk a little bit about levels of awareness. Boy, that could in essence be a 2-hour video. I want to talk a little bit about the narrative and levels of awareness. And I want to talk a little bit about letting go of certain crutches or habit patterns that maybe we've utilized as crutches in the past. Boy, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to squeeze that into 20 minutes. So let's just start off with a little energy update and we'll see where it goes. And I might tie that all in together. So for those of you who've seen my stuff before, I can be all over the place, but I'm looking at things from a multidimensional perspective and trying to tie it in to different components or frequency sets, I guess we could call it. So one of the things I want to talk about first of all is I say the words from one perspective a lot. And from one perspective means, for me, one perspective, a unified perspective, a higher perspective in which all other perspectives are held. From another perspective, I look at things standing from different angles. And one of the messages that's been coming through for a long time, and this is how I process, how I work with others in session, how I work with myself as I go through certain processes, are the ability to stand and see things from different angles, and to be, as what I believe Andrew Bartzis would call a neutral observer. Now, as a human, that can be very challenging at times to be a neutral observer. To stand in that space, I look at it as the center of the tornado. And I've brought this up before, where I had this amazing meditation when I was going through this beginnings of my awareness, perhaps one of my layers and levels of awareness. And that's where I want to talk to around the narrative that's going on around us. Is I was seeing all of the things that were sucked into this giant tornado. In my vision, it was a pink tornado. I think this is relevant right now, so I'm being guided to just kind of talk about this. So I'd seen myself inside in the center of this pink tornado that kind of looked like cotton candy. It was gray, little purple, little pink. And it was the strangest experience, one of the stranger experiences that I've ever had. And I saw all this stuff that had gotten sucked in there. What would get pulled into a tornado? Well, a house, debris. I think I saw a cow. It was all these things I saw inside of this tornado. And I paused it. And I was looking at each individual thing, and I would turn inside of this funnel cloud, and I would see here was a cow. Up there was a house. To the left was a debris or a car. And they were all embedded within these layers of this pink cotton candy, we'll call it, or gray cotton candy. And when I turned one direction, I couldn't see the other things that were caught there. Also, when I looked deeper through this embedded weaving of if you think of cotton candy, what it looks like, this cotton interwoven, there was also other things behind what I was looking at, and deeper, and I would see all of these things that were held within these different layers of this funnel cloud. Now, in this meditation, which I would call a vision, I had envisioned myself, it was lucid dreaming, essentially. I was lucid dreaming. And in this lucidity, I actually climbed up this wall. And when I got to the top of this massive funnel cloud, all there were just was a complete and total floor, if you call it, which is a platform of more cotton candy. And if I stood on top of this massive, never-ending floor of cotton candy, there were funnels all throughout it. Funnels that went up, funnels that went down. And it was infinite. You could think of it as a spider web, if you will. If you look at a spider web that never ends and it's a funnel spider, that's what it looked like. And in that moment, I had this awareness that this is reality. This is my body, because I began to see the cotton candy as the fascia in my physical body. And that's a whole other video that I might decide to do sometime to share with you how I understood that or came to understand that. And this fascia held within it all of this debris. It was full of stuff that I had carried with me that had gotten pulled and sucked into my vortex that we might refer to as our physical form. And so while information was trying to be carried from one part of the vessel or one part of the tornado to the other part, it would get blocked or scattered due to the stuff that I was carrying with me, the debris, the cow, whatever it might be. And I had this realization that I could pause all of that. I think I said this already, and look at things from different angles and even go above this one particular funnel cloud and see all of the other parallels of my own creation, but also look at it as above, so below, as within, so without, and look outside of me and see that this is what our realities look like. I could take each of these funnels into a different platform, a different field, and within each of those funnels, it would hold different things, different information, and they were all happening now. And this is, again, a very multi-layered, multi-dimensional message. For me, it was life-changing to have this lucidity, this vision. And I bring that back to my awareness now because that gave me the ability to see things. I was inside the funnel, I was the spider, but that was also inside of me because it was the fascia. I was the spider walking between different realms of creation because I was able to create that web, these different funnels. Spider for me is the creatrix, the creator. She, from the native stories, is the creation of reality. And of course, I see her as an 8 or it, spider. Of course, that reminds me of the movie It, which we could take into so many different layers. But the reason this 8 is an infinity, right? It's an infinity, a spiral of multidimensionality that is beyond our capacity sometimes to understand. Now I'm going to bring this all back into now. Having seen all of that, some of us are inside of that web that we have spun, okay? And I'm going to take into the physical form in just a minute if I have time. Some of us are inside of that funnel and we're staring at that cow, I'm using an example, or whatever was pulled inside of this funnel, and that's all we're seeing. We're not recognizing, A, that we're even inside of this tornado, because let me go backwards. In order for me to see that I was inside of this web, I had to stop it. And it doesn't mean I had to be stopped. It wasn't moving. It was frozen in my vision, but at the same time, it was like this breathing web. So it's never not moving, but it's a matter of us we have to come to the still point. We have to come to neutral observer in order to see that we are inside of this space, to come inside of the funnel cloud, inside of the spin that is inside of us. So for many people, they're not even aware that any of this exists. And this is their layer of awareness. A lot of this talk and lingo is awake, right? They're not awake, okay? I invite everyone to get away from saying that because, yes, there are many people, and by the way, this is me. I've been getting away from saying that. I'm not sharing with anybody else what should or should not be said. But rather than saying that from one perspective, look at it from a multidimensional perspective and recognize that everybody is aware of something. Yes, there are those who are not aware of much, but they still have a certain level of awareness. And that level of awareness might be that the only thing that matters to them is their family. They're not aware of the world narrative. They're not aware of what's going on. They're not aware of the matrix. They're not aware of dark and light. They're not aware of the ethereal realms. They are highly aware, though, of what their children need as a mother, as a father. Does that make them any less awake than us? Because there are others in the spiritual community who are very awake, if we want to call it that, very aware, yet they are unable to function in the physical very well because they're so aware that all of their senses are so heightened that they're unable to ground into their physical body. Therefore, they're unable to really be accessible for perhaps their family. And again, I look at this from a unified perspective in this now moment and recognizing that both of those are valid experiences. That's not coming from a place of judgment, saying, well, that person isn't embodied and the other person is wrong because they should be aware. That's what we're stepping away from. We're being invited to stop that old paradigm, hit the pause button and ask ourselves, where am I unaware? What are some layers that maybe I haven't delved into? Because those of us that think from the mind, or not just the brain, the mind and the brain obviously are connected but separate, although completely one from another perspective. Where is it in our unawareness are we not recognizing that other being as being one with us? What part of my body am I unaware of? Where can I become more aware within me of joy, bliss, of remembering the fullness of who I am and recognizing the fullness of this other human being, whether or not they are aware of what I am aware of in this now moment from my perspective, based on where I am standing, based on what I have or have not experienced in this lifetime or other lifetimes, based on what it is that I am holding on to that is blocking my view to see the entire view from a higher and more broad view, from a higher perspective that takes things into a deeper view, a higher, if you get where I'm going with that. So it becomes this, where am I restricting the flow? And sometimes that restriction comes from us feeling the need to control the narrative. And I just went into a completely different funnel cloud, if you will. I'm going to start utilizing this because I see that as so relevant right now. Whew. So let me go back to the funnel cloud. There are those of us who are in that center of awareness, but there are those who are completely in the tornado. They're completely in the spin. They are hanging out with the cows, the debris, the building, all floating around in this circle, in this pattern, and they have no idea. And that doesn't mean, though, there are elements at times, even in the spin, that they are doing something that they came here to do, that they chose to do. And maybe it's to beautify the world. Maybe they're totally unaware, but they stop and smell the roses every day. Ultimately, that's their journey, that's their choice. And that's where they are in the current now moment, based on their level of awareness. And again, it comes back to not judging their level of awareness, right? Not judging their level of awareness and recognizing that it may be different than ours. Not better, not worse, not less than. I'm just going to park for a moment. But different. Whew. Okay. How are we feeling that moon energy yet, guys? I'm feeling it. We had the solar flares. I think we had 2 big ones this weekend, and now we've got the full moon tomorrow. I usually feel that energy about 2 to 3 days prior to it, by the way, sidebar. And again, this is something to be aware of. That's my level of awareness. Some people are not aware of it. And so they may find themselves a little irritable and not know why. They may not even recognize that they're irritable or having trouble sleeping. All right, so let me go back into, this is a really good time to just clear all of this stuff out. So I could go into so many different layers here with this particular analogy, right? Metaphor, analogy, whatever. So not getting hung up on the logistics here. So these levels and layers of awareness, part of what we're being invited to do is, and I might run out of room on my camera here, guys. Apologies if I do. But I hope that makes sense. So some people are in the tornado, and there are those of us that have stopped, that recognize the spin, and we're seeing the individual components that are wedged into our field. We're starting to recognize some of the things that are wedged into our fascia in our body. Oh yeah, I've been holding on to this for a while. So briefly, one of the things we could be holding on to is, I can't do this because I am Atlantean. I'm able to access this, but I can't like that particular person. I'm going to go galactic for a moment. I can't enjoy that particular person because they're reptilian. Okay, that's a whole other video again, but that is what, again, we're being invited. Does that expand our awareness? Does that expand our ability to really expand our perspective? Or does that from one perspective, that could have expanded us at one time? Recognizing that someone is perhaps from a different lineage than us. But also recognizing from a broader perspective, that would be saying, I can't enjoy this person because they are from Mexico and I'm from the United States, which are basically brother and sister, right? That's like saying, I can't enjoy this person because they're male, right? And I'm female. I mean, that's really where we're being invited to say, where have we created this bias? Where have we created this separation? And get back into the space of oneness. Can we move through that and past that and let go of that big old cow hanging out in our field? Because that's what it is at this point. Stuck energy. It's something. At one time, it may have expanded our awareness, recognizing that there were beings from other planets. Wow, we have a reptilian brain, guys. It's kind of been a thing that we've talked about for a long time, the reptilian brain. Does that mean I'm going to judge myself and dislike who I am because of that little piece of what I am now judging as negative or positive? That's another thing to think about. Recognize that we are many aspects in our body. Okay. So at one time, remembering that we may have had a past lifetime in Atlantis could be super high vibe and super like expansive, right? I remember when I first started remembering my past lives, or we could call it from another perspective, parallel realities, or we could call it from another perspective, future versions of me that I'm now accessing because I've moved into a place of multidimensionality and awareness. It was kind of crazy. And I started to think, well, that means I must be this, or that means I must be that, because I'm having memories of fill in the blanks. That means this. And perhaps at one time it did, because it held a feeling within that memory that I was then able to access. Yet I was also guided by my team. Don't hold on to it. It doesn't have to be held and coddled and processed and judged and then cleared and then chewed on a little bit more. For some people it does, because of all of the information or experience that's stored in that memory. If that makes sense. There might be a lot to unpack there. But for others, it's like, huh, yeah, Atlantis, cool. All right, boom. Cool. I've got ties to that. I don't need to figure it out. I feel it. It's there. It's part of me. Sweet. Somebody else may have something that they need to deal with from this lifetime that's more important than Atlantis. It might be that they were mistreated in their early human life, and they're still processing that. Yet they're desperate to bypass that by finding all these other memories and saying, well, this is my karma, this is that. And so we're all at different stages. And I would invite those individuals to also recognize I have had that too. I had those own processes that I had to process within me. And ignoring them for as long as I did created physical discomfort for me, dis-ease. I wanted to just touch on briefly that part of these ascension symptoms and all these energies that are coming in are going to stir that stuff up. They may stir stuff up that we thought we've already processed. They also might stir stuff up that we have already processed. So let's talk on that briefly. We thought we've ignored it. That's a whole other video too. So we've ignored it, and here it is staring at us in the face because all of a sudden I'm feeling discomfort in my body, and I go right back to a place of fear. Well, and that fear might have come from feeling unsafe as a child. I'm using that as just a generalized example. But we don't recognize that, perhaps because we blocked that. Now it's that cow staring at us in that tornado that we're like, whoa, I never saw this before. What is going on? So that's the layer that some of us are at. Some of us are seeing all of that. We're seeing all the debris in our field going, oh man, this is a lot. This is overwhelming. What do I do? Again, I'm going to break this video down and do many different videos based around this because I feel it could be helpful maybe for somebody out there, right? For some of us. So in addition to that, some of us are, take a deep breath if you're in that space. Acknowledge, recognize, be patient, integrate, process. For those that have been utilizing all of that debris and then saying, well, I have to focus on all of this debris and I don't deserve and I'm not worthy, or I have to do this before I can move on to the next thing, that may be true. But there are those that it's time to move on. And it's a lot of shadow work, but sometimes it's time to move on because we've been holding on to that shadow as a reason not to move on. That's kind of crazy, but true for some people. And it's like we're so used to doing that work. We're so used to, I have a friend who just was like, I'm not going to see any more intuitives. I don't need to anymore. I have another friend, that's all they want to do is go see intuitives right now because they're trying to figure out what it is they're trying to process and they're looking for answers. Totally different situations. But that person, my friend, who's decided they're not going to see intuitives, you know who you are. Love you. That's because they're at that level and they're recognizing they know. They don't need someone else to tell them. On the flip side, this other person is feeling a lot of discomfort, going, what is going on? And they've gotten answers, the same answers from a few intuitives, yet they're still looking for more answers. That could be an example, a different example, but that's another example of someone who is avoiding, not necessarily avoiding, but they're not going within and doing their own research, their own work. They're looking outside of themselves. Versus someone who's working with the shadow, that is a very valid tool and it's so helpful. And it's something that most of us need to do at some point in our lives, right? Most, not all, because we're all different. So for some people, that shadow work, it's already been done. For others, there is a little bit left still. But we don't necessarily need to dictate to someone else that they have to over-process and continually do that work when maybe it's time to move on. And it can be scary sometimes to leave that chapter and move into the next stage, because it's easier for some of us to recognize what's wrong with us. Now that's another perspective, right? Some of us, it's like we're really good at seeing what's wrong with us. And that's a limiting statement. There's nothing wrong with us, but that's what we might recognize, which is awesome. We've acknowledged it, we've recognized it, and now we're continually acknowledging it and recognizing it, yet we're not moving to that next stage, which is integrating it and moving through into creation, which brings me back to the spider. So I have to end on this note. Boy, I just hit the tip of the iceberg on this one. So I'm just going to end on this note by saying that recognize that though everything I just shared is where everybody's at. And so I'm being invited to really take a step back and continually be in a space of patience, non-judgment, integration with myself as well. Not just my clients, not just my family, not just friends. It is work, you guys. Sometimes letting go and just recognizing that we're done is work. Because it's difficult for us to let go and to say, all right, cow, you're no longer you're there, but I'm just going to work past you. I see you, I feel you, let's move on. And all of a sudden that dissolves, and all of that stuff that's in our field is cleared up and becomes integrated into that web. So it's used as a tool, we're digesting it, and we're moving through it. But breathe. So I know I'm going to do a video soon on practical solutions, but breath work, movement, journaling, meditation, anything we need that feels right to us is here to be utilized. Here to be, it's accessible. But taking the time and allowing ourselves to not get sucked into the tornado, and to stand within ourselves in that 0 point, in that space of unifying with us, even though we may feel that we're all these bits and pieces. Just that moment of stillness can help us stop the whirlwind and see what those bits and pieces are. And that's a play on words. Pieces of information, memories. We then hold that space of awareness for ourselves. And then when something else comes into our tornado and pulls us into their vortex, we are recognizing that that's what happened, and we're able to then bring ourselves back into unity and oneness. Because last but not least, things are heating up, guys, again. And I'll talk about that in perhaps another video. The narrative is louder, as is that big tornado. But all of that is in the process of integrating. It's just perhaps taking more time than many of us are comfortable with. And part of this is about us not being in a comfort zone, getting out of our comfort zone so we can really practice being at that still point, at that 0 point, while being uncomfortable. Because that holds itself within it even more information to digest, giving us an opportunity for even more expansion and ahas that we then add to our package, our toolbox, our expansibility. Okay, in love and light, guys. Goosebumps, you guys, so much going on. We are all connected. We are all sharing in this experience. We are all the fabric of this reality. What are we creating? And I guess I'll end on that note. I said recognize, acknowledge, vice versa, feel, integrate, process, and then create from there. So we're then creating from that space. So we're creating this whether we're doing it consciously or unconsciously. So ultimately, all of this comes back into us getting into our heart space, getting us into a place of compassion, love, and patience for not only ourselves, but for those who cannot see that they are sucked in a tornado in a constant spin. We're holding the space. The more of us that do that, the less those tornadoes and spins are affecting our visibility. And we then become invisible, indivisible. We become invisible to those crazy spins. They can't see us because they're busy spinning. And we become indivisible. We are not divided because we are back into that one perspective, unification and wholeness within ourselves. In love and light, guys. Namaste.